All right. Hello, 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 everyone. I just wanted to thank anyone that is watching today or that might join us in the future for our little get together that we have planned after this webinar. I think it's really important that we all come together as a community, and I'm just really excited to share some of my knowledge, some of my experience with you guys, and hopefully just help out if any of it can. Just to start off quick, my name is Allie. I am a mother to a son with 22q, 9 years old. His name is Oliver, and he was diagnosed at 2.5 years old. Like so many of the kids out there, his first few years were really rough. Um, really difficult for us. He had a lot of feeding issues. He had allergies, GI issues, immune issues, all of the ear infections, which led to a lot of speech and a load of therapies on top of that. So we were in the trenches for quite a while. Now at 9, he is starting to get healthier, but still different diagnoses are coming up, and we're dealing with different things as he gets older. But I really wanted to talk about the diagnosis today because I think that's a lot of the fear and the pain that we experience as parents with 22q kids. Having him, my son, diagnosed at 2.5 was a mix of terrifying relief, if that makes sense. We didn't know anything about 22q. We Googled it all, which was the worst thing possible. It wasn't helping at all, but at the same time, we were really relieved to have a confirmation or something behind all of the madness that we experienced for those first few years, and really just have some answers. Even though they were scary, it was something, because for years we were saying something wasn't right and we just weren't getting anywhere. And so having that diagnosis, while it was really scary, also brought a sense of relief. And I understand the complexity, the overwhelm, and all of that that comes with having a child with 22q, having the initial diagnosis, having the diagnoses that follow. And my hope here today is to just share what's worked for me, what's worked for some of my clients as a coach, and just what I would recommend parents do when they are walking through that initial diagnosis and then moving forward from that. So let's get started. Okay. Diagnosis can look different for all of us. We have the prenatal testing, the diagnosis at birth, my experience of the more delayed diagnosis, and then the additional diagnoses that come after the 22q, any of those diagnoses that come later. And this webinar is hopefully going to help you with all of those. So these are the tools I'm going to go over today that help with the coping and then the moving forward from the diagnosis. And first, I really want to talk about the importance of emotions and expectations. Many times as parents, I think we don't want to stop and address our emotions because we like to think, I don't have time for this, or in the whole scheme of things, my emotions don't matter, but nothing could be further from the truth. I actually had a client named Becca a few years ago that came to me because she was really having issues at work. She was fighting with her husband. She was stress eating, or as I like to call it, buffering with food. She started getting physical issues. She had some GI issues, some migraines, and she was just in a really bad place. And so she came to me with some coaching. And what we found out after digging a lot deeper is she had some unprocessed emotions from the birth of her son. She had a lot of hurt and sadness and anger over the birth of her son. Her son was diagnosed not with 22q, but with another genetic disorder at birth. And her experience was that she suddenly had this medical baby, and nobody congratulated her on just the birth of a beautiful baby. And she really didn't think much of it at the time, but over the years of not processing that hurt, and I mean, just the sadness that comes with it, it was showing up and manifesting later as physical issues, as issues in her relationship, issues at work. And what we did was we took a lot of time to name those emotions and process those emotions, and then move on from those emotions. So, like I said, it's just really important to acknowledge and allow yourself to process all of those emotions, no matter what they are. I think a lot of us, when we get that diagnosis, whether it be with 22q or some of the ones that can follow, we have that initial shock. A lot of us have a grief or a mourning because we're losing a healthy child, or the dreams that may be how we pictured our future or our child's future to be. We are mourning the loss of that, and that's real, and it's a really important thing to go through and process that. There's a lot of anger. For me, anger was actually one of the big ones. I was really angry that this was happening not only to my son, but also to me. I wanted that normal, if you can say normal, I know that's not the best way to put it, but that normal picture of motherhood. And instead, I was caring for a really sick baby. And as he grew, I was caring for all of his needs. And it pissed me off, to put it bluntly. And so anger was one of the things that I really had to work through. And I also had to work through allowing it, because a lot of people were taught not to feel those feelings of anger or hate or any of those negative feelings. So what worked for me was just really saying, okay, I'm angry and I am going to be angry, and just letting that happen. For a lot of us, there's that loss of control, that helplessness that comes with suddenly we have a child and we're not sure how to handle this, especially if we don't know anything about 22q. And that can look like starting to research the heck out of it and trying to fix it and going way deep into the Google and all of the things. There's a feeling of isolation. I felt this a lot too, not really knowing where myself as a mother of a child with 22q fit, and then where my son fit as a child with this new genetic disorder. And then there can be a lot of guilt or shame involved in these diagnoses as well. Excuse me. There's some guilt or some shame that you have a child with 22q. There's guilt and shame in feeling some of these not so great feelings. I've heard from some parents that there's guilt in wanting to know if they caused it. They felt terrible that they, as a mother, had this baby that then is dealing with all of these health issues and the things that come with some of these genetic disorders. And so It's really important. And this is where, for me personally, coaching was beyond helpful. It was a game changer in my life because my coach was able to take what I was experiencing and maybe feeling on that surface level and dig deeper and really figure out some of those unnamed or unrealized emotions that I had. And it really helped me to process and be able to move forward and to just get healthier mentally and physically because it was really taking a toll on my life. Where I think the power of this as your first step helps is because, especially with kids with 22q, we have additional diagnoses typically in the future, right? And so if we learn how to process and move through these emotions now, that can only benefit and help us in the future when some of those other additional diagnoses come as well. Okay, expectations. I have to tell you guys that this is one of my favorite things to work with my clients because we all have expectations, whether they come from our upbringing, from society, from what we create in our head. We all have this manual or these expectations of ourselves and of others. And I am here to tell you that one of the fastest ways to release stress and to create more ease in your life and happiness in your life is letting go of expectations. You know, I think we all have this idea of what parenthood should look like, what our partner should look like. If you name it, I have probably either held that expectation myself or I have had a client that has held that expectation for themselves or for other people. And you can either choose to cling to these expectations or you can learn to let them go. And you can probably guess, I am going to have you learn to let them go. So I think one of the more important ones that I want to start off with is those expectations that you might have of your partner, your family, and your friends when they all get the news of the 22 diagnosis or whatever may come in the future after that. My experience, and you may have experienced the same thing, is that men and women really process things differently. It's reported that men and women handle hard diagnosis, whether it's for their own health or for the health of a family member or a friend, drastically different. And I think it's really important to be mindful of that and allow others the time and the space to process the diagnosis, no matter what it is, in their own way, and just letting go of how we think or feel they should be handling it and let them handle it how they need to handle it. And then there's letting go of the expectations of your child. And in all honesty, I think this is a very hard and important lesson that all parents go through, no matter if their child has a genetic disorder or not. We have those expectations of potty training. Let's see, what they should be eating or drinking, how much, how they're socializing with other children. There's just a lot of expectations that we as parents have of our child. And it's really important to let those go and meet your child where they're at in that moment, letting go of the expectations and just being in that moment and helping them through that moment, including the diagnosis of 22q or what's to come of that. You know, my son has had some diagnoses that have been harder on him. And because he has felt different, the way he handled getting the diagnosis of 22q is pretty amazing. he thinks that that's his superpower. And so just every child's going to handle it differently. And so I just think it's so important. And I love when you as a parent can just meet them right there where they're at and help them through that. And then, of course, there is a letting go of the expectations of yourself. So this was another really big one for me. It is also one of the aspects that completely changed my life, because when my son was a baby and when he was sick, I was really hard on myself because breastfeeding didn't work for us. I wasn't losing any of the baby weight. I was under a ton of stress. I couldn't keep my house, my health, any of that. I couldn't stay on top of any of that. And I just considered myself to be a complete mess. But when you consider what we were dealing with and also just being a parent in general, I was doing just fine. And then when my son was diagnosed with 22q, I was also really hard on myself for how I handled that, because I wanted to keep it together and be the strong one for everyone. And I couldn't be. My son was just given a hard diagnosis, and I needed to let myself feel all the feelings and grieve and cry and let myself not be the strong one for once in that moment. There's really no right way to handle it. And so I just want to remind you to let go of any expectations you're holding of yourself during that diagnosis or any of the diagnoses to follow. For me, that experience alone of hearing of my son having 22q taught me so much about myself. It taught me so much about my son. It taught me so much about my marriage. And it's really why I am here today as a coach and a mom, just sharing what I've learned. That is my big why. It comes from letting go of those expectations and allowing all of that, and then going on to share what's worked for me. Next, I want to talk about the life force. You may or may not have heard of this. This is fairly common in the therapy and coaching world. Talked about processing your emotions, starting to let go of some of that unnecessary expectations. And now that's typically when somebody's in the place that they're ready to move forward, but sometimes life just doesn't feel like that's possible, and it's overwhelming, and it just all feels really hard. This is when I recommend focusing on your life force. It is based on the hierarchy of needs, which you may have seen if you've ever taken a psychology class, but it's a simpler and easier way to put all of that into action. And really what it embodies is your relationship with your body, your physical self, your relationship with people, and that can be your partner, that can be your family, that can be friends, that can be the 22q community, and then your relationship with yourself. So let's start with body. What this entails is your diet, your movement throughout the day, how you're sleeping. I know immediately so many people are like, oh my God, I don't have time for that. And I hear you. Believe me, I hear you, but it doesn't need to be hard. It can be as simple as just drinking an extra glass of water, stepping outside for a few minutes just to feel the sun on your face, moving your body for 5 to 7 minutes a day. Stop scrolling and going to bed earlier. I know that this was a hard habit for me to break, and it's made a world of difference. It's easy to get caught scrolling the Instagrams and the Facebooks and all the things. And when we stop scrolling or we set a timer for that, it can really make a big difference in our sleep. And then there's that really important aspect of people, your relationship with people, your connection to community, and that intimacy in your relationships, whether it be with your partner or just your family and your friends. And I like to tell people again, this doesn't need to be a lot of work. It can be a simple text to a friend saying, "Hey, I've had a hard day," or even, "How are you?" Just keeping that line of communication open. Huge helper for me was joining the 22Q Facebook support groups. Oh my gosh. Any of you that have started them or are moderators or admins in those, thank you. I know it has helped so many of us. And also sharing my experience on those Facebook pages and just feeling that sense of community and hearing people help me, hearing people say, "Thank you for sharing that. That helps a lot." And then another big one is checking in with your partner. We're really quick to assume our partner feels the same way. And one of the biggest lessons that my husband and I learned during all of this, especially those first few years and that initial diagnosis, is yes, they feel the same way, or they can be processing it and feeling completely different and in ways that you may not have any idea and might make you feel a whole heck of a lot more normal when you talk to them about that. So I strongly recommend taking a few minutes, whether it's every day, every few days, once a week, and just checking in with your partner and asking them how they're doing. And, honestly, even if it's just sharing a good laugh with them, it can make a world of difference. And then on the top here, we have checking in and connecting with yourself. So what I recommend for this is every morning, if you can, or when you can think of it, before you hop out of bed, for 2 seconds, stop and ask yourself how you are feeling and what you, not your family, not your child, what you might need today. Can bring up a lot of stuff that, given that we're incredibly busy and we all have crazy schedules between work, therapies, all of that, taking that short moment to just check in with yourself is huge. You might be surprised at what you find yourself telling yourself. Just stopping to take 5 deep breaths while you're rushing from thing to thing before you kind of explode, if that's it. It's just stopping and checking in, taking a deep breath, taking 5 deep breaths, and regulating yourself. Another way that works for me and works for a lot of my clients is journaling. You can use journal prompts, you don't have to, but just let yourself journal for 5 minutes. See what comes out. It could totally be a grocery list. I've done that, but it's out of my head and it's on paper and I can let that go and it's helpful. It can be future dreams of mine. It can be what's frustrating me, but really just checking in and letting all of that out. Again, none of this is meant to be stressful. It's not meant to add any more stress in your life. It's supposed to be easy. Like I said, we often think we don't have time for the diet, the movement, the sleep, the connecting with family and friends, the journaling and checking in with yourself. But I am here to tell you that we can all find 15 minutes to move, to connect, to check in with yourself. Take 5 minutes for your body. Take 5 minutes to text or call a friend or a family member, and take 5 minutes just to journal or just to ask yourself what you might need that day. You don't even have to give up Netflix or social media but you do need to make it a priority in your life. And I promise you, it will make such a big difference. One of the most common feedback I get from my clients is when they even just put 5 minutes to each of them. When they start to do that, they said their lives just seem easier and things just start to flow and they're not worried about things anymore. And it just brings a new, happier perspective to your life. And I want to remind you that we are always fighting and advocating for our children, but we cannot forget to do the same for ourselves. Advocate for yourself. Don't forget to address your needs while you're busy focusing on all the needs of everyone else around you. Make yourself a priority. And one of my favorite things to talk about, hope and love. Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. I actually have this printed and hung up in my office because I think it's a beautiful reminder that we could all use when we are feeling like we're in that dark and really hard and heavy place, is that there is hope and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I want to remind you all that hope is a resource. It is proven that hope really helps in situations of medically fragile families. And so I just wanted to touch base on this a little bit and share ways that I think you can use to help maintain that hope when things are getting really hard. And one of the best ways to do that is shifting your focus. You know, sometimes we get these diagnoses and we start to panic or think of all the what ifs, what can happen, these really big pictures. And it's so important to shift our focus from all of that and bring it back to the present moment and focus on what you can control here and now. So that might be asking yourself, what can you do right now to make things better for you? What can you do to make things better for your child, for your family? This might be dropping everything and snuggling your child. Oh my goodness, can I tell you? I know that's something I can control and I love it. And it brings a lot of hope. It brings me in the moment and it just makes me happy. Maybe it's watching a movie instead of rushing around. Maybe it's realizing that your child can't do something, whether it's in school or at home, and you can control creating a different process for that. And then, of course, there is the practice of gratitude and appreciation, as well as celebration. These are such important components of maintaining hope, and they really are great reminders of everything we have in the moment. And they are also things that we can totally control. Celebration is a big one for us. Celebration is huge in this house. I remember when my son was a baby and he was only drinking 1 ounce of milk at a time. He could not drink any more than that. He would vomit. You know, sure a lot of you know about that. And so I actually still have the journal from this. And I remember one day when he drank 3 ounces of milk. And we celebrated the crap out of those 3 ounces. I think we ordered pizza. I'm pretty sure we may have popped a bottle of wine or whatever you want to say. We made a big deal out of it. And it's those little celebrations of just anything, regardless of the size, that really put you back in the moment and remind yourself of everything you have right there. And they just give you so much hope. So I want you to take a minute today and ask yourself what you can be grateful for right now, today, And then what can you celebrate today? Because I guarantee there is something that you can celebrate today. It's also important to remember that hope really can be a healer. It can heal us, it can encourage us, and it just gives us the strength we need to get through where we're at right now and whatever we have ahead. So don't give up hope and practice these ways to maintain it. And then just to end on this, I want you to remember that even though your child may have a new diagnosis, it's so important to remember that they are still the same child. They are still your child. Love on them. I know that we all do as parents. We love our children so much. If you're here today, you are proving that because you're trying to get as much information as you can, but really remembering no matter what that diagnosis is. Some of the harder ones for my son, I remember sitting in that doctor's office, and then you kind of walk out of the hospital and it feels so overwhelming. But then just taking that moment to remember that that kid right there, for me, it was my son, and he was still the same kid. We just had this new diagnosis that was just going to be a new part of him. And then, of course, the importance of loving on yourself. We as parents are way too hard on ourselves. We don't take the time that is needed to just slow down and love on ourselves and thank ourselves for everything that we have done, everything that we continue to do, whether it is for our child, whether it is for other people, and whether it's for yourself. So really just take that moment today when we are done with this and slow down and give yourself some love. Just acknowledge how powerful you are and how strong you are. We as 22Q parents, we are some of the strongest in the bunch. Love yourself for that. Celebrate yourself for that. And of course, I just want to end this by thanking the 22Q Family Foundation for everything that they do for all of us, and reminding all of you out there, don't ever hesitate to reach out, whether it's to the 22Q Family Foundation and Lindsay, whether it's to me. You can find me here on my website. You can shoot me a message in Facebook. Whatever it is, I am happy to help. I am here to help. There are the 22Q groups in Facebook. There's a lot of places out there for you to feel supported and to just get some of those answers that you need. I don't want anyone out there to feel alone. There's a lot of us here to help you. Thank you. I hope to see you guys all in the live that's going to be following this webinar, where we can discuss our experience with the initial diagnosis of 22Q or the additional diagnoses, and really just an open forum to talk about your experience, to listen to the experiences of others, and to just come together as a community and a group and to have a discussion about that. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. I appreciate it, and I will see you all later. Bye.